All right. Well, great to see everybody. Appreciate you coming on out. What we're going to do today, this definitely won't take the full hour unless we have a ton of questions. So I'll run through this. If you have any questions that you think of, just pop them in the Q&A thing and we'll get through all of them at the end. This is a talk I gave a couple weeks ago at ETH Denver, which is the world's largest Ethereum conference. And if you ever thought crypto was dead, all you have to do is go to ETH Denver and see that it is far from dead. It was something like 40,000 people attended, just incredible, like electricity in the room. It was at this big place in Denver where they do the cattle auction. And it was really exciting. So I got to do a talk when the conference started on Friday evening. I was actually kind of right between Joe Lubin from Consensus and Vitalik Buterin. And so this is a little more broad talk about the macro economy and having crypto be a part of rebuilding the macro economy through a decentralized workforce. So we'll get through the setup and what all that means. But first, a little bit about me in case you're not familiar. I'm Adam. I'm a serial entrepreneur, co-founder of a digital asset management firm called Cambrian, which we actually spun Braintrust out of back in 2018. Braintrust, you probably know, is a decentralized talent network built on Ethereum. I'm also an active investor in this space and an LP in a lot of funds. So, I'm an operator, direct investor, and a limited partner. So I see like lots of different sides of the table. And then as an aside, have a small wine label called Asymmetric, which we're going to be shipping with an NFT on every bottle. So first, I'd like to start with kind of the macroeconomic scene. We have, and by the way, these slides are 2 weeks old before like 5 or 6 banks failed. So things have not gotten better from a macro standpoint, sadly. But unemployment's still low for now. That should change pretty soon. Interest rates continue to rise, although maybe they're done rising for now because the banking system is in trouble. Housing crash is well underway. We're seeing that in every geography, basically. So is this technically a recession? Who knows? But it sure is painful for most of us. So tech and crypto are really the tip of the spear here on the pain side. Again, these numbers are a few weeks old, so they're much higher now, as we see every single day. More tech companies laying off more and more people. Amazon was yesterday, but almost 300,000 tech layoffs in the last year. There were more crypto layoffs in January than there were in November when FTX went under. Big tech, as we're seeing, is rotating out of full-time employees out to contractors. We're seeing that every day on Braintrust as big tech companies ramp up hiring on Braintrust. And then startups are going under, at a record pace as VCs pull back. There was a record low venture capital deployment last quarter. This is part of what caused the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. Was startups continue to burn cash, but venture capitalists are not putting more money in. So there was the bank deposits sort of got away from them. And so, is it a recession? I don't know. We have a lot of layoffs, interest rates are up, capital has disappeared, and employers are switching from full-time to contractors. And for those in the crypto space, the regulators are here and they're not happy. The bad news is there's a continued lack of clarity in the United States. Stable coins, and I wrote this slide before USDC depegged temporarily. That was due to SVB, some of the reserves being on SVB, but they're still regulating via enforcement, and this Operation Choke Point, which most likely was the main cause of Silvergate and signature banks going down. It's proving to be very effective. So it's cold out there from a regulatory standpoint in the US. The good news, however, is that these shady, opaque, not well risk managed, fake crypto banks or whatever, the Celsiuses and Voyagers and Genesis and Gemini, and those weren't frauds. Those were just not well managed businesses. The outright frauds like FTX, none of this stuff is fundable anymore, right? It's just not even a category of business anymore, regardless of what regulators say or do. In VCs, obviously are being held to a much higher standard by LPs to do more diligence. And most exciting, code is still law. So DeFi, is still kind of the shining star here in our space. When Celsius defaulted on all of its lenders, they still had to pay people back on Uniswap because there's no way to default on Uniswap. So there are bright spots to this that will pave the way forward. So crypto needs regulation, and my position would be like, why not just make the regulators' jobs easier? Our space can't grow without common sense regulation and enforcement to rid the space of bad actors. And the good actors, those of us who are building networks that are actually trying to create value and help people get jobs or get more economic opportunity, like we are here at Braintrust, will only be helped by good regulation. So the antidote to all this really is transparency, via smart contracts and open source code, and that's kind of the back to the basics for crypto. So how bad is it for crypto right now, and how bad will it be for next year? So it's bad right now. I think, though, this is not quite existential for us. I think as long as Coinbase hangs in there and tokens aren't completely banned in the US, we should be fine. There's still a lot of bipartisan support for this industry, even post FTX. This is something I've sort of an ongoing conversation with our colleagues at Fenwick, who are very close to the regulators, and I've spent time in DC with senators and lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. Lummis in Wyoming and Gillibrand in New York, who put forth a great bill that obviously won't become law because Congress changed out, but very common sense regulation. So, you hear even Ted Cruz, when he talks about Bitcoin, believes this, and I sure don't agree with Ted Cruz on many things. So look, I think after this purge of 22 and 23, crypto will be the best position it's ever been to rise from the ashes. And here we are. This is like almost April 1st of 2023. I think there's a lot more pain to go this year. I don't think most of this stuff looks any better this year. I think, especially with these bank failures and other uncertainty in the market, like we're still in the winter, and we're going to be in it for a little while longer, at least the rest of this year, I think. But how can crypto help the macro recovery while helping itself? So back to macro basics, like how do you grow out of a recession? You increase productivity. And tech is great for that, right? And this is actually a great use of AI. We actually polled our talent community at Braintrust and then our broader community on LinkedIn and asked, like, do you use AI tools to make yourself a more efficient programmer? Which by the way, I think is one of the only real uses of AI right now, because code is a man-made deterministic corpus. And so like an AI lawyer will just get tricked constantly because the laws contradict each other and it'll be wrong a lot of the time. But an AI Python developer can actually help a developer who, at the end of the day, developers are just problem solvers, right? And so writing code like shouldn't be this laborious process. It should be done by computers. Anyway, we were really surprised to see, like, is it something like 80% or 78% of those polled use some tool, and ChatGPT was the most popular with over 50%. And then efficiency gain was 2/3 said they gained more than 50% efficiency by using these tools. So I was really surprised to see that. I mean, I guess I shouldn't have been. Like, people, developers, folks are always on the leading edge of things. So, onto the next points of growing out of the recession. So the first one is increasing efficiency. The second one is increasing opportunity. Lucky for us, like, the work from home, work remote is the new normal. And what does that do? That makes far more economic opportunity for people all over the world, not just in the US and not just in New York and California. And it allows clients' budgets to go much further, especially in a recession. This is why we're seeing companies who are on hiring freeze in the US actually starting to ramp up usage of Braintrust. And then finally, if you can crush down the middleman and take that fee that they extract and give it back to both sides. I mean, we call it user-owned networks, replacing corporations, when forming capital and allocating resources. Like, this is what crypto is built for, right? Blockchain tech was built for this. And so you replace the corporate middleman's margin with a user-owned network that gives all that value back to the users. Like, this is why I've co-founded this network. This is what keeps me getting out of bed every day. Like, this is the real like economic opportunity of this technology. And talent is going to be a primary driver in the recovery. So, the old way, the legacy way, if you will, is, corporations warehouse talent and underutilize them while, torching to death in a cubicle farm. Big consulting firms, aggregate and then rent out talent to their clients at massive markups. I've, a statistic from this one. I can't name the parties because we're under NDA, but there was a large consulting firm had a contract with a large bank, and they were renting out senior job developers to this bank for $425 an hour and paying the developers $75 an hour plus healthcare, right? So benefits, right? And this is the third point, like holding them hostage with benefits. It makes it hard to be a freelancer. So this contract ended up rotating over to Braintrust, and the bank ended up paying less, but the developers got more, right? It's like that spread, that $425 to $75 spread that the big consulting firm was taking got crunched down to 10% Braintrust fee, and then that money got sent back to both sides. So client dollars go further, talent makes more money. And so, decentralized talent networks are going to, eat into corporations' share of this equation. So, the new way is replacing those high fee middlemen with software and smart contracts. Their margin is our opportunity. So obviously I'm very biased. Braintrust is a great example of this. There's awesome networks like Gitcoin, which is a marketplace for people for bounties for people to fix and enhance open source software. And there's a new company, a new network called Tabali, which is almost like a Braintrust for like administrative workers and that kind of thing. So, and then, the second piece, leveling the playing field with cooperatives that offer good health benefits to freelancers. So you can, if you're afraid of leaving and losing your health insurance, which is a perfectly legitimate reason to not be a freelancer in the US, now there's like these great co-ops like Opolis, which Braintrust is partnered with to give health benefits to freelancers. I like to speak in pictures sometimes. So, old way, new way. And so really the vision here, to kind of summarize is, you can almost call this like the unbundling of corporate America, where knowledge workers and hopefully soon gig workers, I think this model applies to both. We started with knowledge workers because it was a little simpler. They get to leave their corporate jobs, join a user-owned decentralized talent network, and work when they want to, for whom they want, get paid more because the middleman's getting crunched down, and still get access to great benefits. I mean, it's really a win-win-win, unless you're like one of those big old consulting firms. And so this new business model, new network model, is brought to you by new technology called crypto, which is not just for criminals and scammers anymore. And that's it for me. You can follow me on Twitter at AdamJacksonSF, and Braintrust is at usebraintrust. Thanks, folks.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam. There's one question in the Q&A so far, and I would encourage other people to add questions that have come up for them, either in the chat or the Q&A now. But this question was around AI tools and the amount that have sprung up over in at least the last month. And with the rapid rise of AI, do you see as a threat to marketplace platforms and things like Profnet?
Yeah. Great question. So let me zoom out a little bit with my broader kind of interpretation of where we are with AI right now. So, and to be like, for context, like I studied machine learning and data science in college, and I did graduate, believe it or not, which was probably a waste of time and money. But so I know the field pretty well. Every 5 or 6 years, AI has this like renaissance moment where it's about to change the world and about to take all our jobs and enslave us and all these things. And we're just not there. I don't think we'll ever be there, but we're certainly not there right now. ChatGPT is the most recent example of really like impressive application of this technology, because it indexed the whole readable web, and then came up with this kind of cool algorithm that can like summarize things for you, often incorrectly, but certainly eloquently, back in our own soliloquies. And so what it's good at, what that technology is good at, is taking man-made deterministic systems like language or programming, right? Like things that are like, and language isn't always deterministic, but like programming is, right? Like you write a function, you run it a million times, it's always going to have the same output given the same inputs. And so it's really good at being right at that and being useful. And so, but then when it has to like, say it like ingests all common law, right? Or all tort law or all intellectual property law, and then tries to practice law or medicine, like take your pick, right? It'll be right a lot of the times, but like it'll be confidently wrong some of the time, which is just not good enough for those professions. And so I don't see it, I don't see it replacing any of these fields. And so I think like it's a productivity tool, right? It's like, just like how Google Docs can like kind of guess what you want to say next, or Google Sheets or Excel will be like, hey, like it looks like you're averaging these columns, you want to average the rest. Like that's cool, right? If it, or like things that'll help you write an email, and like these are things that are productivity enhancers, maybe 10, 20%. And in programming this case, 50, 60%, right? If it can write 80% of the package for you, and then you just put the business logic in and debug, that's awesome, right? That's it though, right? Like it's not, I don't see it like, it's not the new mobile, right? It's not like the shift from desktop to mobile. It's not the shift from on-prem to SaaS. Those were massive paradigm shifts in the economy. AI is not that, at least not right now. And so look, if you're a SaaS investor or a SaaS developer, you should figure out how AI can make your tools 10% faster, 20% faster, keep people from having to re-enter data, whatever. So back to your question, like, with the rapid rise of this AI, do you see this as a threat to marketplace platforms and things like professional networks? And for anyone who doesn't know about our professional network, like, these are peer-to-peer advice systems. So I think, I don't think it's a threat. I think it's an enhancement, right? So if you want like general, say like, hey, ChatGPT, like how should I negotiate offer letters? Like, what's the best practices for negotiating a salary? They'll give you like a great amalgamation, I would guess, of like pretty generic advice. And that's a good place to start. But then it's like, well, hey, I'm trying to get a job in energy or pharma or tech management. I'd love to talk to someone who used to be a hiring manager at Google. Like, what's the best way to negotiate a salary or benefits package with Google? That's a bespoke thing. That's a one-on-one or a one-to-many kind of thing. And there's not an article probably on the internet about that. And ChatGPT probably doesn't know about that. So like AI will always lag like bespoke human knowledge, I think, in that sense. And so as long as like our professional network is building things that are interesting and unique and not like off-the-shelf garden variety knowledge, I think it'll be super valuable.
Awesome. AI always lags human knowledge. I love that soundbite.
Yeah,
there are a few good questions here about other Web3 platforms that you mentioned, Twally and Gitcoin, and asking you to share a little bit more about the differences between Braintrust and Twally, and a little bit more about some of the other Web3 platforms you mentioned. Yeah, for sure.
So Twally, I don't know a ton about it. I just met their founder. I've never actually used the product, but the founder is a very compelling woman based in New York. And the way she described it to me was it's sort of like Braintrust for sort of administrative knowledge workers. So folks that can help organize things, or maybe even like do accounting work and things like that. So whereas Braintrust right now is like mostly pretty heavy tech. And then Gitcoin is actually very different. Gitcoin's like a public, almost like an auction bounty system where, if you're working on an open source program, you say like, hey, we'll pay, $1,000 to whoever can find bugs or whatever in this thing. And you put these bounties up and anyone can participate. So it's similar, but different from us.
Awesome. And then Patrick had a follow-on question about partnerships that could strengthen our Web3 influence. Is there anything you're eyeing in particular there?
In terms of, I'm sorry, I was cheating. I was reading down the question. Sorry, Patrick. Partnerships that help strengthen our Web3 influence and anything in particular. Not like, we've got some pretty interesting partnerships we're working on right now. So Deal is one of them, and we've talked about this publicly. Deal, DEEL, is this really impressive, fast-growing sort of international payroll and compliance platform. And I spent time with the CEO. Alex is an impressive guy. They're building like a SaaS platform that can help companies manage compliance and international payments just faster and easier. Almost like a Rippling or a Gusto, but for that this part of the market. They're not a staffing firm. They're not building talent networks, and so that's been a really good partnership. That I think will grow both Braintrust and Deal even faster.
Awesome. Since you were scoping the questions, is there a next one you want to take, Adam?
Yeah, I'll just kind of rattle through them here. I'll save Anne the trouble of reading these back to me. So, do you anticipate the recent bank failures actually helping crypto markets? People moving to a bankless strategy given the FUD. This is a great question, and it's like that would be an intuitive conclusion to come to, but I think the opposite will be true. Unfortunately, like the banking, we're all sort of captives in the cage of the global banking system, and the way regulators are sort of clamping down on ramps and off ramps right now is actually making crypto a little harder to use rather than easier. And the other problem, like, you see people like Balaji, this guy on Twitter saying like, let's everyone just hedge out to Bitcoin and like screw the dollar, and anyone who participates in the American banking system is just a rat in a cage. And like, yeah, I mean, we might be rats in cages for now, I guess, if but like it's a big cage and there's no other cages. So we have to come to terms with this cage, and you can't eat Bitcoin. You can't spend it on anything. No one takes it. It's just not a global payments network. I think it's an interesting hedge against hyperinflation, which is the point Balaji's making. But so no in the short term, but yes in the long term, where look, like, imagine if SVB or if all these banks had to disclose on a blockchain how they're deploying customer deposits and what the terms of because they're buying debt with it, right? They're buying yield. What the maturation schedules of that yield is, and then have a script go through and say like, hey, like SVB is long dated on way too high a percentage of deposits, and like they get a D- score, and JP Morgan is better diversified and they get a B+ or whatever, right? I'm making it up, but if banks had to submit that information systematically to a blockchain, and it were immutable, and we could trust the source and trust the database wasn't being messed with, which is a perfect use for blockchain, by the way, that would have like eliminated this risk that we're looking at right now. So I think in the long term, Grady, like this is a technology that will fix these problems, but in the short term, like crypto ain't helping anybody, I don't think. Okay, with the rise of contracting replacing FTE, has Braintrust considered starting an agency to match employers with talent? This is a great question. This is from Taylor. So Braintrust, first of all, is a network kind of made up by a bunch of different little companies, many of whom are agencies. And like Grady runs one of the nodes that brings a lot of the commercial a lot of clients on board. There's, this guy Pure runs another node who brings a lot of clients on board. And so there are many agencies operating on Braintrust. I think what you're asking is like an agency to help, make the matching system more effective. And so, I think, so short answer, like we've got a lot of recruiters interested in helping us here. My particular interest as a technologist is like making matching more effective through technology, right? Just so we can, 10x Braintrust and, not have to have like tons of people, slinging resumes back and forth. So, yeah, I think, short answer is like, I think we're starting to see this kind of organically happen on the network already. Okay, do you foresee an economy in which contractors are the majority of employees at companies? How does that look, and how does like Braintrust help companies manage those disparate actors? Yeah, this is an anonymous question. It's a really smart point. Like, is there a point where like contractors make up the majority of contributors at an employer, basically? And this actually goes back to this term I used earlier of like the kind of unbundling of corporate America. I absolutely think that's the future. I think corporations will exist to like serve a really specialized need to a certain customer set, and that anything that isn't really core to that problem they solve for their customer should be done by other people, like either contractors or companies or agencies or whatever. And we're seeing that with tech, right? I mean, that's why Braintrust started in tech, is because every company sort of needs to act like a tech company now. But like, we'll talk about Nestle Purina, which is a big CPG company. They own lots of direct-to-consumer packaged good brands. Dog food and bottled water and chocolates and staples, and so they're not a tech company, right? They don't sell software, they're not Salesforce, they're not Google, but they sure as hell need to act like a tech company because e-commerce is such an important part of their strategy. So they've been a big client on Braintrust, building out e-commerce platforms, and so yeah, I think like now that phenomenon happened because there's just not enough tech people to go around, especially specifically in 2021. It's tilted around a little bit now where there's more supply than demand. But yeah, I think like eventually companies have less employees, more contractors, and those contractors make more money and are more flexible and have good benefits, right? So it's better for the company, it's better for the talent. Would love to know, next one, would love to know which type of clients are upcoming on Braintrust. So Braintrust serves all sectors of the economy. So tech, industrial, energy, consumer packaged goods, automotive, you name it. And so we see, that like, I think banking is like a bigger sector right now for whatever reason. I know Bank of America has been like growing really quickly. But I don't like, we serve basically all the sectors. Okay, I'd love your tips on how as a PM, I could encourage our two devs to use AI tools to improve efficiency. Smiley face. I'm not really an expert on this yet because I just don't write code anymore. I miss writing code. But what I would say is like recommend that they just go try out for their next project, like try out Copilot, and then try out, and Copilot's part of whatever the IDE is that everyone uses, and then try out ChatGPT and just like do a test project. Like I saw this on Twitter the other day. It was really cool. There's an AI developer I follow who said, "Hey ChatGPT, write me a spec, like a TRD, technical requirements document, to build Duck Hunt," which is like like the old Nintendo game. And then that spec came in, and then he went in and cleaned it up, and like there was some nonsense in there. And then he fed the spec back to GPT-4 and said, "Now write Duck Hunt, write in Python or whatever." And it did, and it didn't do a great job, but like he did some bug fixing, and then like a few hours later, he had a functional version of Duck Hunt. that the spec and the code was written by ChatGPT. So do stuff like that. It's not mission critical, like, you know, just to get used to the product. And I just think that's so cool. I think developers are going to be so much more efficient with that. Which the next one, would love to know which other AI tools you recommend using aside from the obvious ones. You know, to me, like, there really aren't any AI. Like, AI is just a technology that's going to be built into all tools. So, I mean, if you use Google Docs, you're using AI every day. If you ever let Gmail finish your sentence for you, that's AI. You know, eventually, like, AI will be baked into all the stuff we use every day. It already is. Like, AI powers Google. It's the best search engine in the world. It probably always will be. Like, and so I don't, you know, that I'm not deep enough into the current application space outside of like the obvious ones. Okay, God, these are great questions, guys. Thanks. Many consulting firms are struggling to find a foothold in the metaverse and are experiencing layoffs alongside Meta, Microsoft, big tech. How can we be sure that Web3 crypto is a safe haven? Does Braintrust vet companies that are posting on the platform? This is an awesome question. So let me take it in reverse order. Braintrust does kind of minimal vetting of companies that are posting on the platform. Yeah, it's a decentralized, you know, thing that, like, kind of anyone can use it, and anyone can sign up and get a connector code and start referring. Anyone can, you know, just start. So, like, that's kind of the downside, is, like, you know, you get some garbage in there sometimes, and, you know, we're working toward doing a better job of, you know, having, you know, vetting, you know, who can post jobs and that kind of stuff. So, you know, I think we have room to improve there. You know, the metaverse topic, like, yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. You know, I've all the respect in the world for Zuckerberg, who places this big bet in 2022. He says he's going to spend whatever 10 billion a year on it, and then just gets whacked by Wall Street. And, you know, like, the Oculus is clearly not anywhere near product market fit, and you know, metaverse is just getting crushed. And now we're in this, you know, recession or pullback, and whatever you want to call it. And so the metaverse was a big head fake so far. You know, maybe it won't be in the future, but it's basically frozen for now. There's no, you know, Web3 crypto. It's certainly not as dead as metaverse, and it's, you know, in my experience every day of talking to investors and talking to other entrepreneurs and investing myself, like, it's nowhere near dead. It's just in a, you know, a heads down build phase. So there are no safe havens in this world, but you know, my confidence that crypto is rebuilding, you know, web marketplaces and the global financial infrastructure, like, I've never been more sure of that, for sure. Okay, when do you anticipate Braintrust will move to support professionals outside of tech knowledge worker space? Yeah, this is an awesome point as well. So for background, like, you know, we started in the tech community because that's where I'm from. I've been a developer and a programmer on Upwork and other sites like that. That's probably how I paid for college. And then I've been hiring people on those sites. To this day, I still use those sites for certain roles. And so you know, I think, you know, Braintrust is well built for any knowledge worker field. I think, you know, paralegals, you know, compliance professionals, I think that kind of work is frankly, it's just as complicated as IT work, and you know, probably not as big, but pretty big. I think that would be an awesome category for us to get into. I think accounting and tax work, another one, like, that's really complex stuff, and in a lot of cases more complex than programming. Those would be awesome categories for Braintrust to get into. I hope we have entrepreneurs that come and get grants and start building on the platform, building those communities out. I've had conversations with folks along these lines. It's not something I'm personally spending a ton of time on, just because there's so much other low-hanging fruit in, you know, just improving the platform, getting professional network built out, and you know, making the tech category, you know, even bigger, because we're just scratching the surface. So sorry, like, not a great answer, but, like, hopefully in the next year or two. Okay, Allison, can you address the current imbalance of available jobs listed on Braintrust, high number of applicants, and how Braintrust is working toward increasing the number of available jobs listings? really, really important point, Allison. Thanks for the question. So to explain it, it's completely macroeconomic driven. So 18 months ago, we were in exactly the opposite position. We had so many clients that we couldn't onboard them fast enough. We had to have a wait list. Like we had big companies saying like, can we add 2,000 jobs this month? I mean, like Goldman Sachs literally asked us if they could start adding hundreds and then thousands of jobs. And we were like, absolutely not. We could never fulfill those for you. You would post them and, you would get no applicants. It'd be a terrible experience. And then, the economy just craters and massive layoffs, and the whole economy just rotated. And it usually takes, to go from, boom, peak boom to trough bust, through a global macro environment, it usually takes like a couple of years to get there. This one took 12 months or less. And so we're just, the explanation is we're just in the opposite position now where, we're on hiring freezes and massive layoffs. And even though there is a rotation to contractors, it's nowhere near the rate at which people are being laid off. So the talent supply, I think has gone from 75,000 to whatever we're at now, 240,000. I should know our own dashboard numbers better, but the talent supply has exploded on Braintrust. Really, really good, high quality people. Because the economy is so rough, the job side is really slowed down. So look, the good news is everything will come back. This economy, I've been through this enough times. Like it's a sine wave. It always comes back and forth. The demand will come back. There's absolutely no question about that. And we're in tech, right? It's a forever growing sector. And when those jobs come back, like we have more than enough talent to feed them. And so if you're talent on Braintrust now and you're, kind of waiting around, like hang in there, like there will be roles posted for you. Like I doubt it'll even take 18 months. We'll see. Favorite, this is from Patrick, favorite project not including Braintrust. It's a hard one. I am an angel investor in a bunch of things that aren't live, but I think will be cool. I'm going to cop out and just say Ethereum. I think Ethereum is incredible and one of the most compelling and world-changing projects in the world. And we're built on Ethereum. Do you foresee Braintrust expanding to non-tech hiring or merging with another network? Yeah, so we covered that one. Merging with another network is interesting. I don't know how that would work, but who knows? What do you see as the main barrier? This is from Allison. What do you see as the main barrier for companies to become new clients to listing jobs available on the Braintrust network to allow for more jobs to get on the network? Yeah, Allison, this is a great, if I had to guess, you're like a UX person. The barrier is one, demand itself, right? Like they have to want to do that. Assuming they have the demand, it's just like the product's just got to be a little easier to use. And we actually have a bunch of new product managers that have joined our node Freelance Labs, working under Elena, who's our general manager and now runs all product for Freelance Labs. We've actually got a bunch of PMs, dedicated to making it just far simpler to join, post, and then match. We want to really keep iterating that matching algorithm. Okay, the next one. As an experienced PM, I've been on Braintrust for almost a year and have yet to land a gig. The process of applying seems to be as opaque as traditional job boards. Is there something I'm missing? First of all, sorry, that's not been a great experience, and you're not alone. Other people definitely have this experience, and I personally know how frustrating that is. If the process, parts of the process are as transparent as they can be, hey, the approval queue kind of gets sorted by what skills are in demand, and they kind of get through it as fast as they can. And then the opacity, the opaque part really comes from the clients, right? It's we actually don't Goldman has different things they're looking for than Nestle does, than Volkswagen, than Porsche, than Koch Industries, right? We do our best to connect demand and supply, but that last mile of what's the difference between a hire and not a hire, we don't always know. It's opaque to us as well. So I know that's not like a totally satisfying answer, but it's probably not you. It's probably like, a symptom of the supply demand imbalance that's in the market right now. All right, next one. Curious what the future for Braintrust is in 3, 5, 10 years. So am I. I'm hoping I live that long to see it. So, we've clearly found product market fit here with Braintrust. We are growing, really quickly, even through this recession. And so I think, I've touched on a few of these things. I think Braintrust should be like the analogy here. Let me give it a different analogy. Like the analogy I use for Braintrust is like, remember the world before Airbnb? Like there was lots of vacation rentals, right? But like no good, safe way to find them. Like you had to like call someone or like answer a Craigslist ad. And so you had no idea, A, if it was a scam, or B, if, like what the place should cost, because there's no price discovery, and C, like what happens if, person flakes, or the cleaner, was never cleaned. Like there's no good, safe way to manage reputation, create a trusted place to transact, and price discovery. Airbnb comes along and they build a great product and they introduce all those three things. And then they start to, they consolidated this very fragmented space of vacation rentals, and then grew a category that some argue is larger than hotels now, right? And they did it through great product and a solid business model. And so I see Braintrust doing the same thing for global talent. So right now, that's like it's very hard if you're a client to like find a reliable source of technical or design or product management talent and know who they are, see their reputation, have them fully vetted, know what's a fair rate to pay them. It's not like a consulting firm tricking you into paying 4 times market rate, that's how it's done right now, right? And so I think if we just keep doing what we're doing and find more and more creative ways to grow this network, like it will become, the Airbnb of the talent space. What are you building at next one? What are you building at Braintrust that gets you excited to go to work every day? Well, the analogy I just mentioned gets me really excited to think about, all of us at Braintrust here, like being part of, the Airbnb of the global talent space. Like that's really exciting. Part 2 would be, this new professional network we're building that, allows people to, if we're earlier in their career, like to join a cohort, or, ask a question of a person who's later in their career and get either kind of one-off career advice, like, hey, can you help me negotiate this offer letter, like example I mentioned earlier, or like join a mentorship cohort, be like, hey, like I'm just out of college, I'm a, junior marketing manager. How do I become CMO one day? And what are the 5 subway stops from between here and there? Because you can't read that stuff on LinkedIn. You can't ask GPT those questions. Like you need like real people who've done it before. And we've built this awesome professional network that fills this need. We know there's tons of heat around both the supply and demand sides of this, and we think having the token as the value exchange medium between supply and demand is an exciting unlock. So we're just about to exit private beta on this. Probably some people on this call are already in the private beta, and so those 2 things get me just really, really fired up about this and keep me slogging through this day to day. Okay, I'd love to know when you recommend hiring talent on Braintrust versus Upwork versus TopTal. You mentioned using them all. Don't use TopTal. We don't, and you shouldn't either, because their fees are really high. No, I mean, they're fine. They do a good job. It's fine. We're not really competing with them. Like the world's a big place. They have great people. We have great people. It doesn't matter. Upwork and Fiverr are the ones I think I mentioned that are actually very different than Braintrust. So that I'll start with an important stat. Like the average contract size on Upwork, I think, is $120, or somewhere in the low hundreds. Fiverr, it's even lower. It's all public information. On Braintrust, you could see it on our dashboard. I think it's $88,000 or $89,000 is the average contract value on Braintrust. So very, very, very different product, right? I actually we use Upwork to find like a video editor, or I use Fiverr to like design an NFT logo for our winery, and it was great. It was $100. It was quick. But when I had to design like a large software package or a point of sale system or whatever, like that's where you want to go to Braintrust for. Okay. Share difference between Freelance Labs, distributed labs. Yeah, so there's a bunch of, so the question is, can you share what the difference is between Freelance Labs, distributed labs, all these other builder companies? Yeah, these are companies that are owned by different people. Like I own Freelance Labs, Grady owns Distributed Labs, on and on. And these are companies that, have a vested interest in helping build Braintrust. They own some tokens, and they all kind of, they're not all owned by one entity. So they're decentralized. From an ownership perspective, I only own one of the nodes, and their goal is to just make the network bigger and more useful. All right, next one. Curious how you recommend increasing rates, especially as an experienced talent on Braintrust for a while. Yeah, great question. I think once you have a great reputation and relationship with a client, I think it's a little easier then to kind of ratchet things up, as long as it's not like too egregiously above market. But rates are, a lot of times these clients aren't always super price sensitive. They're quality sensitive, right? So kind of getting your foot in the door and like proving you're really reliable and you're a problem solver and you're easy to work with and you're a good match for these folks, and then start raising the rates is what I would recommend. All right, last one, Tushar. Do you see any trend in freelance hiring in a certain sector? Profiles as FTEs are slowed, frozen for most of the companies. Yeah, tech is rotating out of FTEs and into freelance hiring. A lot of these companies that you see doing layoffs are ramping up on contractors because there's still a lot of work to be done. Last one here. I noticed ranking reviewing clients went away. Is there a reason for that? Seems like talent reviews are still around. Are they also going away? This is news to me. I hope if they went away, it's a bug, because we should be rating and reviewing everybody. So we'll make a note of that one. Thanks for bringing it to our attention. So, all right, guys, that was, man, what an awesome outpouring of questions. And it just, it goes to show you like how engaged our network is here. And, we always learn from doing these things. Like, really appreciate you guys taking the time with us. And, hopefully the presentation was helpful, and, we'll keep doing more of these. I think, like, look, we're all in this one together. We all have the same mission here, is to unbundle corporate America, get more jobs out to more people, expand economic opportunity outside of New York and California. And that's certainly what I'm most passionate about. And every time we do these, we all get a little smarter and a little better together. So thanks so much for coming, and looking forward to the next one.